Hi, everyone. I'm going to come down very quickly because it's noon, and this is the worst time slot, whoever put me in. No, I'm joking. Who's hungry? Oh shit. Shoot. I didn't bring enough, but Ari? Front row gets, and then we're going to pass it down. There's plenty of other stuff. You guys hungry? All right. You save it? Okay. Who's hungry? All right. Can I enlist you, Ariel, to hand this out to others that are hungry? Okay. I can't have tummies rumbling while I'm talking. Okay, good. As you guys are getting food, let me introduce you to me. Is it clicking? How come it's not clicking? Oh, there we go. Okay, this is me, and that's my little emoji. You can see from the logo game, I'm very corporate. So corporate turned startup gal. Also very human people oriented. So very much in the let's build a relationship. Let me talk about how we can talk about change, influence mindsets and behaviors. And I also went deep into user-centered design, customer experience. So I share this because a lot of it has to do with how I'm going to approach the problem we're going to talk about. Cool? Okay. Where am I pointing? There we go. All right. Also, how I approach the problem is where I come from. So, SoapBox. We make the workplace more human and higher performing. So, have a little bit of knowledge about this, and hopefully you guys will agree by the end of the day, or the end of the next 28 minutes. There we go. Oh, I also like kale. And Uncle Buck was my favorite movie. Dave, where are you? Is he? Oh no, he's probably left the room. So Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. John Candy, big fan. All right, normally that is me. So SoapBox, very customer oriented. And actually I started at SoapBox as Chief Customer Officer. So a big part of my heart is customer success. And now I run sales and marketing as well. I normally like to ask about you, team size, et cetera, to get a sense of the room. But I think I've gotten to know folks and have a good sense. And I actually think the more important question that I want to ask you, and I'm going to actually pause and get you to talk amongst your team, is what is your job? And by team, I meant table. So pausing here for a second, talk to the folks next to you, behind you, make sure no one's left out of the conversation, and talk about what is your job. Not just your title, but what do you do? Go one layer below into your job description. All right, cool. And when it starts to get quiet, I'll get everyone fully quiet and we'll continue. All right, I hear a little faint murmur. So I'm gonna ask, is there one brave person that can share with me what's your job? Who can share? What is their job? Yeah, thank you. I'll repeat, Andrew / project.
So I'm Andrew. I work for YouTube Crowd, and I have 3 teams. So one is our implementation services team, another is our high-touch CSM team for enterprise clients, and then the third is our relationship manager, that's kind of commercial and customer touch, but more like size.
Yeah, thank you. So Andrew has 3 teams, high touch, low touch, and implementation. And I love how you started with the people. So you're focused on who your teams are. And so I imagine, like Andrew, lots of leaders in the room. Okay, so I think we generally have a sense of each other. Let's dive into it. So conferences like this make my head spin, partially in a good way. I'm a super nerd. I geek out like you wouldn't believe, and so I'm leaving with all of these good ideas, and I'm gonna come back to my team and be like, guys, this moves? See? I said I was a nerd. Can't hold that against me. Guys, this is exactly what we're going to do, and it's exactly what's going to transform us. And then this happens. Things get shelved. I hit a roadblock like a brick wall. This could not be, I love Google Images. It could not be a better photo. And what I realize is that stuff gets in the way of my team being higher performing. That kind of blows. And I imagine for you, this might be the same. See any faces you recognize? Yeah, a few. Okay. For most of you, not all, I couldn't find everyone, but these are folks from your teams. I want to talk about how do we get my team, but also your team, more higher performing. All right. So, and my main thesis for today is how people, so the day-to-day thoughts, emotions, activities matters just as much as what people work on. When Brent and Burke and I were talking about what I should focus on, we sort of, the day is kind of orchestrated in that customer journey. We start with onboarding, then growth, and then et cetera. And where I wanted to come in and say, okay, that's great, but how are you going to get this stuff done? Because we're going to leave here, our head's spinning, and we're going to hit those brick walls. And so I want to focus on the how, and I want to focus actually much more on the emotions. So I'm going to ask you, put yourself in the meditation yurt or in the coffee that you're grabbing because you're so frustrated and you need to get out of the office, and channel into how you feel at the office, or what frustrates you, what motivates you, what excites you, what gets you jazzed, and perhaps also what gets your team jazzed. Cool? All right, let's dive in. Plan for our time. One is what gets in the way of employee performance. Two, why this matters. And then, of course, what to do about it. All right, so we all are very familiar with the customer experience. It looks, a little bit more like this, not so much a straight line. And they'll go through onboarding, adoption, and renewal and growth. Your employees actually go through a similar thing. It looks a little less straight, and you'll go through onboarding, and then they'll go do their job, and then you'll talk about review and promotion, right? And the onboarding and the review and promotion, kind of think of those as milestones. But it's doing the job that is really the piece where a lot of everything that we're talking about today and tomorrow happens. So you're going to onboard a new customer. You've got a massive amount of reviews you got to do because it's the end of the quarter, et cetera. And along the way, there's going to be a bunch of woes. So have a look at this list. This is a pretty, I got some folks, and I think some of you contributed to it, a laundry list. Certainly, clarity on goals, compensation. I got a note from somebody on my team just this morning that we need to talk about comp. Lots of things that are coming up from your teams, right? Now, here's the challenge, is that these woes lead to disengagement and lead to poor performance. And so we might go and say, well, this is exactly what we need to be addressing, right? Let's go and address these woes and figure out the tactics. I actually think there's another thing that gets in the way. What we have found at SoapBox is it's the managers. And particularly, it's the managers doing the wrong role, doing the wrong tactics consistently. Now, before you boo me out of the room, let me tell you why. So let's focus on managers doing the wrong role. So typical SaaS org structure, you have HR and finance, but then you also have marketing, sales, success, right? And so when we think about engagement, it typically lands with HR, if you're large enough, the office manager, maybe the CEO, right? And you'll go through and do a bunch of tactics like, we need to talk to people more. We need to tell them about our strategy, right? Celebrations, career planning, recognition, etc. And these are all for the employee. By the time it gets down to the employee, it is all watered down. And you kind of don't see it anymore. And we know why. It's because managers are the biggest lever in employee engagement. And we talked about how engagement leads to performance, which ultimately makes you guys all rock stars and on a rocket ship, right? So that's point number one. You guys are really important. Andrew, you are super important for your team that you mentioned. All right, let's dive into, and actually, before I go into the next one, have you ever had a bad manager? How did you feel Monday morning, right? That's, I could share all the stats I like, but this is the stuff that's going to stick in your gut. All right, point number two, managers do the wrong tactics. So the typical management flow is, January 1st or in your offsite, you'll set your strategic priorities. We're going to crush it this year. We're going to double ARR. We're going to raise our A, B, C, right? Yes? Okay, that's just my boardroom. Anyways, and you're going to expect certain outcomes. We're going to do a surf trip when we succeed. And then you're going to go through stages, right? So strategy planning and implementation planning. You might come to the CS100, it's brain spa, get all of these great ideas, and then you'll go into implementation planning, right? And typically, this is when your team is brought in, and oftentimes, and I am guilty of this, is I go, hey guys, this is exactly what we do. And we kind of tell them what to do as opposed to working on it together. Here's the issue. I, and all managers, operate in an iceberg of ignorance. So I only know the top issues that are happening to my employees. I don't see the full set of things that they face day to day. And that is the full set that is influencing their engagement and then performance. And so this might resonate, but I'll ask you a question, which is, have you ever felt held back or unaddressed? Or have you ever felt held back by an unaddressed opportunity, idea, issue, or question? I have, right? I leave them like, well, better go for coffee or better leave early because this isn't going to happen, and just you become much more unproductive. All right, point number 3, consistency. Turns out we do these bad things all the time. Oopsies. We went back and we looked at engagement, employee engagement. Now this is the thing, right? CEOs, it's our top priority, whether you're 30 people at like SoapBox or 30,000 like Anthem, one of our customers. All of the studies have been talking about it, and they say it's been the top for the CEOs past 16 years. So we went back and we looked at the scores, and it turns out they haven't changed for 16 years. So it's still the same 30% that are like, yeah, love this. And then the rest are like, not my jam. And there's 20% that are actively disengaged. So saying like, I don't like this, and I want all the rest of you to not like this. And why does that happen? So for us, we realize this is the stuff that's hardest to change. This is culture. This is day-to-day. And for somebody like me who's focused on change management, I know how hard it is to shift those mindsets and behaviors. And it's about habits. And the thing to make you sort of resonate with this is, how many times have you vowed to change and then you fall right back into old habits? How many times have we left conferences like this being like, yes, we're going to, of course my CSMs are going to be service-oriented and then also be savvy and be able to conduct a meeting and ask for that upsell, right? And then we fall right back into where we were. All right, I think I made my points, which is poor management gets in the way of awesome employees, and really what we see is managers aren't focused on motivating employees, they aren't aware of the real problems to solve, and they easily fall into old habits. All right, so why does this matter? Well, if you're like me, my team is everything. They call me Mama Dubs at the office, and I'm absolutely obsessed and just love my team, and they are the sparkle and the everything that my company is. Now, we can get a little bit more specific, which is, well, they're going to make or break your customer experience. When you're in CS, they're talking to your customers. They're the delivery mechanism for that element of your product. They're also, as I've been saying, the ones that are going to bring to life everything that we're learning at CS100. Chris, I have one other slide that I made. We have to insert it. Oh, where did it go? Oh, it's in my pocket that I buttoned up. Slowly. I made it. So while we were talking, this is my slide addition. So you don't have to believe me in what's on here, but Brad talked about people work with people, right? And if your employees aren't motivated, well, that's not great. And really what you do is you compete on the efficiency of customer experience. Doug from Emergence talked about success being the most important factor, therefore reinforcing the first point. Sandy, amazing quote at the end. Customers don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to fix they expect you to fix the things when they go wrong. We are all human. And if we're not knowing what the issues are that are going wrong with our customers and we're not fixing them, that's where we fail. And then finally, Dave talked about, the value of what we offer is determined by the customer. So turns out, thank you guys from this morning. You guys all agree with me too. Here's another tidbit that I think is actually pretty interesting. So let's look at the legacy of working norms. So start of industrial revolution and kind of the past couple of hundred years, it was factories. And it was that factory model that created the bureaucratic system, right? Boss, mega boss, mini boss, junior boss, peons, right? And communication went down, right? Do as I tell, make this thing. And it worked, right? IBM grew and all of the companies became really awesome and big. And people were generally okay. It's, not to be pejorative, but like being the cogs in the wheel, right? A good, steady job was the thing. And that was okay, and certainly my parents' generation and before. Let's fast forward to today. There's the new normal at work. We work here or a really cool, swanky office that's brick and beam in like a really high-rent city. And communication's like everywhere. There are 17 ways to reach me on my phone, right? And communication's going up, down, vertical, in and out and around all the time, right? Managing that communication and making sure that the manager and the employee are having that dialogue, turns out it's super important. Because it's not just that we need to keep settling up, growing, we need to become rocket ships, especially in our industry. And here's the other fun thing. You can thank people like me, the millennials, who are like, give me my gold star. I want to be special. But I also want to work somewhere where I feel value, where you're giving me a purpose, right? I sense I'm doing something good. And if I don't, I ain't giving you my motivation. So these are pretty compelling things for why it matters to engage employees and make sure they're highly motivated so that you guys can crush it. All right, let's get into what to do about it. So we went through this, we agreed, employees doing their job is super important. They've got a whole ton of woes and issues, and then there's a bunch of things you could do. So as an example, too many clients to juggle. Well, you've got standard onboarding steps like and email templates and QBRs. The thing that I really like about this when I've talked with my employees is building confidence. There's an emotion. Remember, I warned you there was a hippie on the stage. She's going to talk about emotions. Confidence is really big. All right, let's move on. Dropping the balls. We could do things like hire additional CSMs, or for us, we use client success and we call it Bliss. I can tell you offline what the original proposed name was and why we landed at Bliss, but it actually is for us because when we started using it and we moved from spreadsheet to a software, it was relief, right? And that was really important for our employees, for my team. Moving on, clarity on team goals. We can talk about OKRs, all hands meetings, and really what this gives is an element of focus. But you know what? This stuff could all be wrong. So the reason why I say it could all be wrong is because these are all individuals. These are all humans, and I don't know what's going on with your employees, with your customers, with your strategy, with the actual individual and what happened to them even yesterday that is going to make tomorrow not productive for them or just massively productive. So let's talk about then what changes, and it's us. And it's really about building a habit of having discussions with employees about the things that matter most. And getting in there and talking with folks to make sure that you're uncovering the key things that are important to them for their motivation and performance. Now we're going to say, but Jess, okay, we're 46 slides in, you said a lot, and this is all you have? Is that what you guys are thinking? You guys are so quiet. All right, hopefully we're going to get more energy as the afternoon goes on, and more so tonight at the concert. Well, if you are thinking that, I have a few other extra things for you. First is, please, 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 take all the notes you can. So take copious amounts of notes, make your head absolutely spin, be a super nerd, snort like I did, and get inspired from today. Cool? Agree? All right, good, I'm glad. Otherwise, Dave and everyone else would be very angry with me. And then stop. So on the plane ride home, think nothing. Go and ask your team one question. What can I, our team, or you do to achieve our goals? Then that's when you can go do the stuff at CS100 that we've learned that matters most to your employees. Think about how does it relate exactly to what they need. All right, so that's bit number one. Number two, I have a few other things that are fun for you. Another one is check out Atlassian Team Playbook. I have a huge company crush on Atlassian. From their business model to how they've scaled, to their product, to how they do everything, they really nail it, and they've nailed it here. And they say it's our no BS guide to unleashing your team's potential. And what I really like is they organize a whole bunch of ways to get at what the team is struggling with based on the core emotion or the core issue. So whether it be stagnation, poor communication, lack of ownership. And it recognizes that I can't just sort of say, boom, here's the answer. Make sure that you have standardized QBR template, and then all your consistency and process issues will be solved. This is what's going to help you unearth the right solutions for your team. So check out the Atlassian Team Playbook. I'd also suggest check out SoapBox, because what we do is we make good one-on-ones and team meetings a habit with SoapBox. And yes, fine, you could say shameless plug. Here's the reason why I'm sharing it. Two things. One is what makes my tummy feel awesome is that what we're hearing from our customers and Intercom and Wayfair and actually Adobe, parts of are using it, is it's helping with the consistency. And I'm passionate about making sure that employees don't come into work absolutely frustrated. And having spent all that time in the corporate world and knowing the frustrations of getting things done and wanting to feel motivated, and when I hear that managers are saying, yeah, it really helps me be consistent with connecting with my employees, that makes me really happy. Another thing, and this is non-tech, so put away the phones, go into the yurt or what have you, and I'd like you to do some introspection. What is your job? Andrew, I really laud you. Thank you for being brave enough to stand up. And what you talked about was, here's who I manage, right? And many of you probably also talked about, well, I am accountable for all recurring revenue and NPS, and I make sure that the team is implementing and onboarding customers, et cetera. I'm going to ask you, perhaps reflect on that, and after this, what is your job? And Monday when you walk back in, perhaps that feels and looks a little different. All right, Jess, that's a lot of slides. So you can see I do a lot of internal dialogue as I go through this presentation, because I'm mainly trying to channel exactly what you're thinking, which is, let's go for lunch. So let me recap. Let me boil it all down for you and share with you my thoughts. All right, so we talked about the employee experience, and we agreed doing their job is super important, and that's the key thing to focus on, not the point in time milestones along the way. And along the way, and while they're doing their job, they're going to come up with a whole ton of woes and issues. And the reality is that those are going to lead to poor performance. If they are unaddressed, just like your customers' issues, if they are unaddressed, or if even their new ideas that are really inspiring in them and giving them energy, or the questions that they have that are holding them back from moving forward, if all of that is unaddressed, there's disengagement, and that leads to poor performance. And, well, the challenge is that poor performance is solved by you guys, because you guys and I account for 70% of the employee engagement. So we are the biggest factor in whether employees are motivated and performing well. We also operate in an iceberg of ignorance, so we don't actually know what's not going well. And we're really bad at changing our habits. So it's really tough to actually make the shift from good to bad. So it takes focus. So what to do about it? Managers. Managers building the habit of having regular discussions on what matters most to employees. And asking this one question: what can I, our team, or you do to achieve our goals regularly? And of course, once you master that, check out the Atlassian playbook, check out SoapBox, go in a yurt, think quietly, and most importantly, what is your job as a manager, and how do you put the human back in resource? How do you make your team higher performing?